My daughter's call came through urgently, her voice trembling as she spoke, worried about her mother's relationship with someone else. Even though I was miles away, I could feel her anxiety through the grainy video feed. "Mom's been spending nights with a guy named Aaron," she confided, her eyes wide and full of concern. "He's the mayor, Dad. Everybody knows him, he's the one with that flashy car and the limo." As she painted the picture, her unease was almost tangible, and I did my best to reassure her, promising to get home as soon as I could. "Please, just come home, Dad," Emily whispered, her voice barely holding steady. "We need to be careful with this." I promised her I'd do everything in my power, my heart aching for both her and her mom as I hung up. "I'm David Wilson. I'm 42, a design specialist for a large electronics company, and I serve as a major in the National Guard. Right now, that's why I'm on a year-long assignment in Afghanistan, working with the command staff. I've been married to Megan, my best friend and the love of my life, for 18 years. Together, we have a wonderful 15-year-old daughter named Emily. Megan's 40 but could easily pass for younger. She's the most beautiful woman I know, standing at 5 feet 6 inches, her figure somehow grew even more striking after she had Emily. Her shoulder-length dark brown hair and warm brown eyes, which always shine when she smiles, have always been what I hold dearest. Our marriage has always been strong, even through my deployments, we've kept that warmth and passion alive. I've never questioned her loyalty, and she's never doubted mine. But now, something felt unsettlingly different. I had no idea where things had gone wrong. After getting all the necessary paperwork filed for 30 days of emergency family leave, I boarded a plane. 26 hours later, I arrived at our hometown airport, weary but determined. It was around 6:30 on a Friday night when I parked a rental car down the street from home. With the mid-November sun gone, streetlights cast an eerie glow across the neighborhood. Lights were on in the living room, kitchen, and upstairs in the master suite. From the car, I could see Megan moving around inside, as though she was getting ready for an evening out. A knot twisted in my gut. I quietly called Emily's cell phone, and after a few rings, she answered in a soft voice. "Is Mom going out?" I asked, trying to mask the tension in my voice. Emily confirmed that Megan had been in her room for over an hour. She'd heard the shower and sensed an unmistakable excitement in her mother's demeanor. "Why is she doing this to us?" she asked, her voice layered with pain. I tried to reassure her, saying, "Let's not jump to conclusions just yet. We need to know what's really happening." She asked what I planned to do, and I explained that I'd follow her mom first to see for myself before taking any action. Emily urged me to be careful and even asked if I wanted to change clothes. I declined, telling her that my camo fatigues would work just fine. We promised to support each other no matter what came next. At 7 o'clock, a sleek black Mercedes pulled into our driveway. A tall, well-dressed man stepped out, sending a chill down my spine. But instead of walking up to the door, he stayed outside, talking on his phone like he had all the time in the world. The lights in the master suite dimmed, and a few moments later, Megan emerged, locking the door behind her. Her face glowed with a smile as she walked toward him. I felt my heart shatter. She glanced back at the house to ensure Emily wasn't watching before leaning in to kiss the mayor warmly. He helped her into the car, and they drove off together. Somehow, I managed to pull myself together long enough to catch that kiss on my phone. I kept a safe distance as I followed them, grateful for the clear roads, and watched as they crossed town to a nearby hotel. They parked, and when they stepped out, they moved close, arms wrapped around each other. I took another photo, this one capturing their ease and intimacy, a painful contrast to the love I'd thought we had. They looked just like a couple, lost in each other, enjoying their night out, blissfully unaware of the heartache they were causing back home. Once they went inside, I put on my camo hat and sunglasses and trailed them, my heart pounding louder with each step. Inside, they slipped out of sight, but that only made me more determined to get to the truth. The hotel lobby had the usual polite smiles and "thank you for your service" greetings, which I acknowledged on autopilot, my mind somewhere else entirely. The event board caught my attention, and there it was, the St. James Hospital Charity Ball, happening on the 3rd floor. The soft sounds of a live orchestra drifted down to the lobby, a harsh contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I opted to take the stairs instead of the elevator, figuring I could use the exercise after the long flights. When I reached the 3rd floor, I followed the music straight to the ballroom. Taking a quick look through the doorway, my stomach twisted as I spotted Megan inside, looking every bit the happy partner beside the mayor, greeting friends and supporters. She glanced back once, but there was no recognition. In her mind, I was still 10,000 miles away, battling flies, sandstorms, and the Taliban. I couldn't help but notice that she wasn't wearing her wedding rings. Needing a moment, I ducked into the restroom and sat in a stall, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I'd always believed that my marriage to Megan was rock solid. How could she be unfaithful like this? Here I was, serving my country overseas, and she was at home breaking our vows. And the people around her, didn't they realize she was married to an army officer, a man dedicating himself to his country? Tears began to form, but I wiped them away. There was no time for self-pity, I needed a plan. I stayed in that stall for half an hour, letting the festivities hit full swing, before finally making my way back to the ballroom door. A few people noticed as I edged along the wall, tucking myself behind a pillar where I had a clear view of most of the room. I didn't have a ticket, but my uniform granted me access. The young man at the door even saluted, saying, "Welcome, sir." I couldn't shake the thought, it was a pity my wife and her lover didn't show the same respect for me and the uniform I wore. After a few minutes, I spotted them again. They were on the dance floor, her arms draped around his neck, her head nestled against his chest as he held her possessively. My hands shook with anger as I snapped picture after picture, each click of the camera feeding my fury. It took everything in me not to storm out there and punch the guy, but I knew that would only end with me in cuffs. What I needed was solid proof of their affair, only then could I decide how to make them pay for their utter disrespect, for me, for our daughter, and for the U.S. Army. After a few dances, they returned to their table, sharing intimate touches and soft kisses. I captured it all, each shot adding to the mountain of evidence. Feeling I'd seen enough for the time being, I stepped back into a nearby hallway, finding a spot where I could keep an eye on the ballroom doors and the elevators. As an army officer, I'd been trained in the art of patience, and tonight, that patience served me well. 2 long hours slipped by as I waited, watching guests gradually trickle out and head toward the elevators. Finally, Megan and the mayor appeared, standing just outside the ballroom doors, chatting and laughing as if they didn't have a care in the world. My pulse quickened as they turned toward the bank of elevators. I was only about 15 feet away, seated on a bench along the wall, wearing my camo fatigues and sunglasses, my name tag prominently displayed on my uniform. Couples passing by either smiled or gave a polite nod, but Megan and her lover were so caught up in each other that they didn't even glance my way. I watched them enter the elevator, still holding hands, and made a note as it stopped on the 11th floor. After confirming that the elevator didn't return to the 3rd floor and seeing no other couples in line, I turned and headed toward the registration desk, my mind racing with the next step. Approaching the attendant, I explained with urgency that I needed to deliver an important message to Mayor Simmons. Flashing my government ID, I hoped it would be enough to get his room number. She hesitated but finally revealed he was in room 1114. I thanked her, feeling my heart pound as I took the elevator to the 11th floor and found the room. Once there, I checked the hallway to ensure no one else was around, then pressed my ear against their door. I could hear soft voices inside, but it wasn't enough to confirm anything. Moving down the hall, I found the door to the stairwell and wedged it open with my handkerchief, keeping it from locking behind me. Glancing at my watch, I saw it was midnight. Emily had mentioned her mom usually returned home between 2 and 3 in the morning, sometimes as late as 7. I settled in, bracing myself for the long wait ahead, grateful for the patience my army training had instilled in me. Through the stairwell window, I kept an eye on room 1114, determined not to miss them when they finally emerged. As I waited, my thoughts began to drift. I couldn't help but picture Megan with another man, a man now experiencing the intimacy that she had once promised to me alone. It felt as though my world was crumbling, filling with an endless darkness of hurt, rejection, and humiliation. I reminded myself to stay strong for Emily's sake, but the sheer pain of knowing that the woman I loved and trusted completely was, at that very moment, giving herself to someone else nearly crushed me. Around 1:30 a.m., I slipped out of the stairwell and pressed my ear to their door again. This time, faint sounds reached me, sounds that couldn't be mistaken, soft moans, followed by my wife's voice, unmistakable in her passion, saying, "Yes. Oh God, yes. Do me, Aaron. Do me hard like that. You're so good." The tone in her voice was one I knew all too well from our moments together. Tears streamed down my face as I retreated back into the stairwell, waiting for them to come out. At 2 a.m., I left the stairwell one last time, positioning myself near their door, phone ready to record their exit. 15 minutes later, I heard the chain slide back, and the door clicked open. I hit record as they stepped out, Aaron's arm draped protectively around Megan, who leaned into him with a satisfied smile. She looked freshly showered and put together, while he had a smug expression. They shared a quick kiss and turned toward the elevators, but then Megan spotted me standing against the wall. I didn't hesitate. I demanded to know how her night with her lover had gone. Her eyes widened in shock, and she placed her hand on her chest, her face showing sheer disbelief. Megan fell to her knees, pleading, "This wasn't supposed to happen. You weren't meant to see this." Aaron took a moment to process the scene before insisting it wasn't what it looked like, that Megan was simply helping with his campaign. I couldn't resist pointing out the irony of such campaign tactics, where infidelity apparently played a role. I confronted him about his lack of morals, driving home the fact that his actions were wrecking my marriage while I was away serving our country. He tried to deny any intimate involvement, urging Megan to back up his story, but she refused to play along. Instead, she detailed the kisses, the moans, and every word I'd overheard through the door. Realizing there was nothing left to save, I told Aaron he could have her, expressing my disgust and calling them both cowards. I added that even our daughter knew of their betrayal. Aaron just stood there, stunned and speechless, while Megan sobbed on the floor. I told her not to bother coming home that night, suggesting she spend it with her lover instead. I let her know I'd be with our daughter, and on Monday, I'd file for divorce and share the mayor's indiscretions with the news. I advised her to stay away until I returned from my 30-day leave, then, she could decide how to move on with her life. Megan pleaded for forgiveness, saying how sorry she was for being unfaithful during my deployment, begging me not to reveal the truth to Emily, though Emily already knew. I admitted I couldn't understand why she'd done this but acknowledged she'd made her choice. Feeling worn down, I walked to the elevator, her apologies trailing after me. I couldn't bring myself to accept her remorse, especially seeing the contentment they shared. My last words to them were harsh, and as the elevator doors closed, I felt the full weight of betrayal settle over me. When I got home, Emily was waiting for me, her face tense with worry. She hugged me tightly, telling me how much she'd missed me. I reassured her and confirmed that, yes, I'd seen her mother with the mayor. Her face twisted in pain as she admitted that her concern wasn't so much her mother's absence but the sense of being forgotten. She even begged to come back with me to Afghanistan, but I gently explained that she needed to stay here. "I can't stay with her," Emily insisted, her resentment unmistakable. Despite her feelings, I reminded her that Megan was still her mother. Tears welled up as she whispered her fear that Megan didn't love her anymore. I held her close as she cried, offering the comfort she so desperately needed. After a while, I managed to get Emily to go to bed. I made sure the house was secure, setting the door chains just in case Megan decided to come home. I couldn't prove she and her lover had used our bedroom, but I didn't want to take any chances, so I opted to sleep on the couch. I wasn't even sure whether they'd been in the house or not, but I couldn't shake the thought. My sleep was fractured, 45 minutes here, half an hour there, as my mind raced with how I'd handle things when Megan eventually came by to collect her clothes and essentials before my leave ended. I could have taken the high road, booked myself a hotel, and left her the house for a while. But I couldn't bring myself to be that accommodating. She was the one who'd shattered our marriage, so dealing with a bit of inconvenience for the next month seemed fair. Besides, her lover would likely be more than happy to take her in. They wanted to play house. Now they could try living as a couple and see how it suited them. Emily and I both slept until around noon. I got up first, made coffee, and whipped up some scrambled eggs and toast for us. We kept the conversation light over breakfast, trying to keep things as normal as possible. Afterward, we rinsed the dishes and loaded the dishwasher. Suddenly, the phone rang, and Emily and I exchanged a glance before she reached over to answer it. It was Megan on the line. Emily took the call, skepticism dripping from her voice as she questioned her mother's sincerity. She didn't hold back, pointing out that this wasn't just a one-time mistake, the affair with Aaron had been going on for months. I was the one who told Dad to come home, she admitted, frustration rising. You've been ignoring us, wrapped up in your obsession with him. Megan pleaded with Emily not to hurt the mayor, but Emily didn't budge, disappointment plain in her tone. After the call, she remarked on how confused her mother seemed, as though she couldn't grasp the gravity of the situation. I'm worried she doesn't get it. She doesn't understand why you don't want her back. I assured Emily that her mother's misunderstanding would only deepen as she began facing the consequences of her actions. The rest of the day passed quietly as we both worked to keep our minds off Megan and the mayor. We talked about Emily's future plans, and I encouraged her to stay in her current school despite her worries about how her friends might react to her mother's scandal. Real friends will stick by you, I told her, though she still seemed unsure. Eventually, we agreed that I'd call my mom to see if Emily could stay with her until my deployment ended, hopefully in 5 or 6 months. Later that afternoon, the phone rang again. This time, it was Megan. I answered, but as soon as I heard her voice saying, "Dan, oh Dan, please, let me explain," a wave of anger and confusion crashed over me. Without a word, I handed the phone to Emily. "What, Mom?" Emily's voice was cold as she held the phone at arm's length, allowing me to hear Megan's frantic pleas. Despite Emily's resistance, Megan begged to speak with me. Instead, Emily demanded answers, confronting her about the betrayal that had been unfolding over the past 6 months. Megan defended herself, claiming she hadn't meant to hurt anyone, but Emily's anger and disappointment were unwavering. Through her tears, Megan professed her love for both of us, prompting Emily's sharp retort. "How can you say that? You're the one who's been with the mayor this whole time." Megan quietly requested some personal items, including clothes and her birth control pills, a revelation that hinted at her regret and frustration. Sarcasm laced Emily's response as she mentioned the possibility of Megan becoming pregnant with the mayor's child and how inconvenient that would be. Emily offered to pack her things, adding that Megan might need extra makeup to keep up her image as the town's socialite. "Your stuff will be on the curb for you to pick up," she finished, her tone steady and unyielding. After ending the call, Emily broke down in tears, and I wrapped my arms around her, trying to comfort her. I told her she'd been tough on her mom, but I understood where her anger was coming from. "We'll get through this together," I assured her, hugging her again before stepping away to gather the items Megan had asked for. I retreated to my office, drawing on my military training to start strategizing our next steps with precision and focus. This situation, to me, felt like a battle requiring a carefully thought-out plan. My immediate tasks were clear: hire a divorce attorney, cancel our joint credit cards, set up separate ones for Emily and me, change the beneficiaries on my life insurance and retirement accounts to Emily, and transfer half of the funds from our joint checking and savings into new accounts accessible only to us. Yet dealing with Mayor Simmons posed a bigger challenge. He deserved to be exposed as the selfish, wife-stealing coward he was, and I intended to do just that. That evening, around 8 p.m., the phone rang again. "This is David Wilson," I introduced myself. The caller identified himself as Jack Miller, a city councilman and a friend of Mayor Simmons. He mentioned he wanted to discuss what he called a small misunderstanding involving me, my wife, and the mayor. His choice of words rubbed me the wrong way, given the severity of the situation. Jack suggested there was no need for harsh language, framing it as a simple late-night gathering between consenting adults who might have had too much to drink. He sounded confident that a conversation could smooth things over. I wasn't buying it. "The mayor has been having an affair with my wife for the last 6 months, I shot back. Jack acknowledged that the situation was challenging for me, but he still hoped we could find an outcome that would be good for everyone. I pressed him to clarify. "Who exactly is everyone here?" "Because my main priority is my daughter. The concerns of others don't matter to me." Jack spoke about the mayor's influence in the community, cautioning about the potential fallout for anyone who harmed his reputation. I couldn't resist snapping back, "Is that supposed to be a threat?" He quickly denied it, claiming he was just laying out the facts and emphasizing that he didn't want to see any harm come to me or my family. I leaned into the phone, issuing a warning. "Listen closely," I said. "I've spent the last 6 months in combat with the Taliban. I won't hesitate to confront someone like Mayor Simmons, a man who lacks the honor to respect another man's marriage. Let me be clear, Jack, neither you nor the mayor has ever come up against someone like me." I continued, warning Jack that I was immune to any so-called influence he or the mayor believed they had, and I pointed out that my soon-to-be ex-wife had probably failed to mention what might happen if they tangled with me. I went on to remind him of the extensive network of former military friends I have within 100 miles, all of whom share a low opinion of those who exploit the spouses of soldiers while they're deployed. I advised Jack to keep his distance from Mayor Simmons if he valued his own well-being, hinting at the consequences that might be looming for the mayor. Jack tried to pivot, hinting that a sizable financial offer could resolve things. I dismissed the offer, my anger flaring up as I expressed just how furious I was at Aaron Connolly for using my wife while I was serving overseas. "No amount of money will fix what he's done to me and my daughter," I told him. "The only resolution I'll accept is seeing Simmons and my wife experience the pain they've caused us." I instructed Jack to pass that message along. He sounded uneasy, acknowledging the possible consequences, and tried to find a way to lessen the impact. I didn't waver. I laid out my terms, a public confession of the affair and the mayor's immediate resignation. I warned him that anything less would compel me to expose everything and take action. Jack sounded surprised by my intensity, but I reassured him I was dead serious before ending the call to go make dinner for my daughter. As I headed to the kitchen, Emily walked in from the garage. She told me she'd placed her mom's belongings by the curb, and they were picked up by someone in a black Mercedes. I joked that if those clothes didn't get collected by the right person, they might end up at Goodwill. I mentioned I'd packed her everyday clothes but had hesitated and it came to the more provocative lingerie I'd seen. Emily nodded, understanding, and I suggested that she'd eventually need to address these things with her mom. She assured me she'd do it when the time felt right. The weekend passed uneventfully. Emily helped me with the laundry while I focused on my plan to expose Mayor Simmons. By Monday morning, I reached out to a friend at the local paper, Tom Green, and arranged to meet him for coffee at Danny's. When I walked in, Michael, a former sergeant from my National Guard unit, greeted me warmly. Over coffee, I shared what I knew about Mayor Simmons's affair with the wife of a deployed soldier. I kept the soldier's identity confidential, stressing the sensitive nature of the situation. I told Michael that, in the soldier's position, I wouldn't want such a betrayal splashed across the public eye. I described what I'd witnessed of Simmons's involvement with the woman, leaving it up to Michael to decide on the next steps. I clarified that contrary to any rumors, the woman involved wasn't separated or in the middle of a divorce. Her husband had only recently discovered the affair. Michael expressed concerns about the potential backlash and legal risks of making accusations against the mayor. When he asked for proof, I showed him the photos and videos I'd collected, asking that he partially obscure the woman's identity. Though visibly uneasy, Michael understood the weight of the matter. I conveyed my resolve, saying that while revealing the truth would undoubtedly carry some shame, I was ready to face it. I explained how, while Simmons carried on with my wife, I was thousands of miles away, completely unaware. I emphasized how profoundly wrong it felt for the mayor to exploit a soldier's absence in such a way. Aware of the situation's seriousness, Michael agreed to investigate further after I confirmed that the affair had continued throughout my deployment. I transferred the evidence to his phone, and we shared a moment remembering our fallen comrades before parting with a firm handshake. With that task behind me, I turned to finding a good divorce attorney. After considering several options, I decided on R.J. Collins, ESQ, and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. When I arrived, I was surprised to find that R.J. stood for Lisa Taylor, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with a direct approach. Without hesitation, she asked how she could help. I told her I was seeking a divorce and warned her up front that it wouldn't be amicable, given that my wife had been having an affair with the town mayor. Lisa's reaction was one of genuine surprise. She dropped the pen she'd been holding. I confirmed that the mayor in question was, indeed, Simmons, and proceeded to recount the whole story. For the next half hour, Lisa listened intently, jotting down notes and occasionally pausing for clarification. When I mentioned my daughter, Emily, Lisa asked how she was coping. I explained that Emily was deeply hurt and unwilling to stay with her mother during my deployment. Considering Emily's age and preferences, Lisa suggested that she could stay with my mother instead. I agreed and planned to reach out to my mom to make the arrangements. Our conversation continued for nearly an hour as I detailed our financial situation. Lisa recommended that I consider possible resolutions with Megan, but I told her that watching the closeness between Megan and the mayor had destroyed any chance of reconciliation. I insisted she prepare the divorce papers without delay. Throughout the week, Megan tried reaching out 5 times, but I kept our conversations brief, assuring her that I'd keep her informed as needed. By Friday, Lisa informed me that the divorce papers were ready and asked her I'd like them served. I decided to invite Megan to my home the following Monday at 2 p.m., while Emily would be at school, to serve the papers in person. I called Megan's cell to set up the meeting. She attempted to engage me, as if ready to explain herself, but I cut her off, telling her she'd have the chance to talk on Monday. Megan arrived a few minutes early, and we sat down at the kitchen table. Seeing her stirred up a mix of emotions in me. Despite everything, she still looked beautiful. I offered her coffee, but she asked for water instead. I acknowledged her wish to talk and assured her she'd get the opportunity, but I also informed her that someone would be arriving soon to serve her with the divorce papers. Her face went pale. I told her I hadn't wanted this any more than I'd wanted her affair with Aaron, but it seemed neither of us would get what we wanted. She pleaded for a chance to explain herself, hoping there might still be some resolution. Reluctantly, I agreed to listen. Megan began sharing how she'd worked on Aaron's campaign and had formed a friendship with him while I was deployed. Feeling lonely and depressed, she'd sought comfort in his company. She recalled a dinner event where Aaron had suggested she go by her maiden name and leave her wedding rings at home to avoid rumors. At the time, she hadn't thought much of it, but she admitted now that removing her rings had been a serious misstep. That evening, she mingled with people who all saw her as a single woman. When I pressed her to reveal when the affair began, Megan admitted it hadn't started immediately. It began after a night of close dancing, which ended with a goodnight kiss when Aaron dropped her off. She tried to justify her actions, talking about her loneliness and the thrill of being treated like royalty by someone important in the community. I confronted her directly, asking how she could betray me while I was away serving our country. She acknowledged her mistakes, admitting to the confusion and longing she'd felt in my absence. She told me Erin's companionship had, at least temporarily, eased her loneliness. Megan confessed that their outings became more frequent, seeing each other 2 or 3 times a week. One evening, after a romantic dinner, Erin invited her back to his place. Though she initially hesitated, she eventually agreed. Later, she described feeling remorseful and insisted that Erin take her home afterward. She claimed she'd ended things with him then, saying she still loved me, but also admitted she'd started to question that decision. She explained that Erin had reached out after some time, expressing how much he missed her and wanted to see her again. He apologized for their previous transgressions and promised he wouldn't put her in a compromising situation again. Though she had resolved to stay away, Megan confessed that she agreed to see him once more the following weekend. She described attending a private gathering at a friend's house in the Bluffs, where only 5 or 6 prominent couples were present. During this event, she was caught off guard when the wife of a well-known doctor asked her how she'd managed to catch Erin's attention. Flustered and unsure of how to respond, she lied, saying she was separated from me and going through a divorce. The lie Megan had spun quickly circulated throughout our small town, leaving her feeling increasingly trapped. One weekend while Emily was away, Megan spent time at Erin's home, continuing their affair. She expressed deep regret over the hurt she'd caused both me and our daughter, admitting that her actions were the biggest mistake of her life. Despite her wish to undo the damage, she recognized that was now impossible. When I asked about her feelings for Erin, Megan seemed uncertain. She wasn't sure if she loved him but admitted she enjoyed their time together. I pressed further, questioning the seriousness of their relationship and if she saw a future with him. She avoided giving me a clear answer. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. I told her it was likely for her, and she walked to the door slowly. After confirming her identity, she was handed a manila envelope with the divorce papers. She stood there, visibly shaken, before closing the door and turning back to me, tears streaming down her face. She asked if our relationship was really over, and I confirmed it was. I reminded her that what she cherished was the life we built together, a life she had now thrown away. I added that Emily would be staying with my mother until my deployment ended. Overcome with guilt, Megan broke down in tears. The next day, the local paper's front page featured a photo of a married woman leaving a hotel room with Mayor Simmons. The headline posed questions about her identity and whether her husband, who was deployed in Afghanistan, was aware of the affair. The article recounted the charity event they had attended and included hotel records confirming the mayor's reservation that night. They'd been seen leaving the room at 2 a.m. The story also mentioned unverified reports of their regular meetings over the past 6 months, all while her husband was away serving overseas. The newspaper claimed editorial rights to publish the story due to the mayor's public office and the offense against a soldier in harm's way. The public reaction was swift and intense. The mayor's office scrambled to contain the fallout, calling the story fabricated. They insisted that Mayor Simmons would never risk a marriage, especially one involving a deployed soldier, suggesting that he was the target of dark forces conspiring against him. A press conference was scheduled to address the allegations, but the damage had already begun to spread. Later that day, I made it my mission to ensure the truth was clear. Over the past 6 months, too many people had seen Simmons and Megan acting affectionately in public and now, one by one, his friends and supporters began distancing themselves from him. Several people contacted the newspaper anonymously, confirming the affair and voicing outrage at learning Megan's husband was deployed while it was happening. At that afternoon's news conference, Mayor Simmons stood alone, his allies on the city council noticeably absent. Only a few staff members remained, and even they appeared reluctant to be there. Cameras rolled as he expressed his shock over the accusations, claiming he and Megan were simply acquaintances and that he'd never done anything to sully her reputation or that of her husband. But halfway through his speech, Megan forced her way through the crowd, stepping up to the microphone in a bold move. "My name is Laura Wilson. I am the wife of Army Major David Wilson, and for the past 6 months, I've been having an affair with Mayor Simmons. Simmons tried to dismiss Megan's claim, insisting he didn't know her and calling her a liar. But Megan, undeterred, faced him tearfully, voicing her shame and heartbreak as she accused him of pursuing her even though he knew she was married and that her husband was stationed overseas. With tears in her eyes, she apologized to me through the TV cameras before walking away, leaving turmoil in her wake. Reporters flooded the mayor with questions, but he turned and stormed back into City Hall. Exposing this betrayal publicly took a serious toll on my already fragile sense of self. I knew the risks when I contacted Tom Green at the paper the next day. Soon after, the city council president announced Simmons's resignation, stating that the council would govern until a new mayoral election could take place. Although I expected some sense of satisfaction at this outcome, all I felt was a deep emptiness. Loneliness settled in, and I missed Megan more than I thought possible. That afternoon, my reporter friend called to let me know Simmons had packed up and left town without a forwarding address, while Megan remained behind. During my final days on leave, I focused on spending time with my daughter and allowed Megan to return to our home. Emily and I took a trip to my mother's house, 60 miles away, where I enrolled her in school and promised I'd come back for her once my deployment ended. The following week, I boarded a plane back to Afghanistan, feeling a burning anger that I planned to release on the enemies hidden in the desert. A few weeks later, Megan moved in with Simmons, and together, they vanished from town. As for me, I eventually returned from Afghanistan, but not unscathed. I'd sustained severe injuries during my service. My daughter became my support as I adjusted to life with the loss of a leg following an ambush. Now, I work as a design specialist for a large electronics firm, living with my daughter. Occasionally, I share my experiences, speaking about the scars that soldiers carry long after the physical wounds have healed. Story 2. I'm a 28-year-old man, and I met my girlfriend, who's 27, toward the end of college. We'd been dating for 5 years, and after graduation, we decided to move in together and share an apartment. Surprisingly, living together through the pandemic only brought us closer. I loved her so deeply that I began planning a proposal, even getting some input from her friends and family on the perfect way to do it. I considered her my best friend, someone who I thought would never hurt me. But I was wrong, and now I'm here, sharing this story. My girlfriend has a large, diverse circle of friends, while I tend to keep mine small and close. I'm pretty introverted, but she's the opposite, the life of the party, able to make friends anywhere. I admired that about her because it often nudged me to step out of my shell. Recently, one of her close friends was celebrating a birthday, so she took charge of planning a surprise girls' night for her friend group. I even helped with some of the arrangements. However, I'd always felt uneasy around one of her friends, someone who, for reasons I couldn't understand, seemed to dislike me. She'd made her disdain for me clear without any cause, and it bothered me that she'd be at the party. Still, I trusted my girlfriend and believed she wouldn't let this friend spend the night badmouthing me. The night of the party arrived, and I agreed to drive my girlfriend to her friend's apartment since she preferred not to take her own car. She invited me in to say hello to everyone, and most of the group was friendly, except, of course, for the one friend who never seemed to like me. She made a comment, which sounded like a joke but stung a bit, about knowing someone who'd be a better match for my girlfriend. My girlfriend immediately shot her a look and told her to knock it off, which reassured me that she wasn't buying into that kind of nonsense. I headed home, happy to have a quiet night to play some video games. After a few hours of gaming with a buddy, I settled onto the couch and began scrolling through my phone. I checked out a few Instagram stories from the girls at the party, curious to see how things were going. At first, everything seemed normal. My girlfriend looked like she was having a great time, clearly in her element running the show. But as the night wore on, she seemed to vanish from the posts, almost as if she'd left early. I shrugged it off, thinking nothing of it, and went to bed, excited to see her the next day. The next morning, I woke up and browsed through my phone again. As I scrolled through the photos the girls had shared, I came across one from the friend who disliked me. In the picture, my girlfriend was arm in arm with another guy, both of them grinning ear to ear. I found it odd since I'd been under the impression it was strictly a girls' night. His hands were positioned low on her waist, and she was blushing and looking up at him with a big smile. I wondered if she was tipsy or if there had been some flirting going on. The memory of her friend's earlier comment about finding someone better for her crossed my mind, and my stomach dropped. Was she actually trying to set my girlfriend up with this guy? To make matters worse, he appeared to be in a relationship too, which only added to my discomfort. I didn't want to come off as the jealous boyfriend, so I kept it to myself when she came back later that day. Over the next few days, though, I noticed my girlfriend acting differently. One of the biggest red flags was her growing distance. Instead of curling up on the couch with me to watch our favorite shows, she began spending her evenings alone in the bedroom, glued to her phone. Our usual hugs and kisses stopped, and we didn't share any intimacy, which felt incredibly out of character. She'd also started going out without telling me where she was headed. Normally, she'd casually mention if she was off to the gym or the library, but lately, she'd just slip out without a word. When I asked her about it, she told me she was an adult and didn't need my permission to go places. That night, the conversation turned into an argument, and I sensed her frustration was partly fueled by things her friend had likely been saying about me. In a moment of exasperation, she said she felt like I was holding her back from excitement in life. I didn't know how to respond, so I just left the room. The next morning, she apologized, saying she hadn't meant it, and we agreed to move on. But after several more days of her distant behavior, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. One night, while she was asleep, I picked up her phone and started going through her messages, desperate for some reassurance that my worries were just paranoia. I first searched for the guy's name from the Instagram photo but came up empty. Then I searched for the word nightclub and stumbled across a conversation with someone named Nick, a name I didn't recognize. I knew all of her friends from the party, so I was confused about who this Nick could be. Curiosity getting the best of me, I clicked into the messages, only to find that Nick was indeed a man, the very guy from the photo. As I scrolled through their conversation, my worst fears were confirmed. They'd been exchanging explicit photos and messages. In one text, he wrote that he couldn't wait to be with her again. That word hit me like a punch to the gut. But the most devastating part was a message from my girlfriend, where she called me boring and said she wanted to spice up her life by sneaking around with him. At that moment, my entire world came crashing down. Every dream I'd had for our future lay shattered, and I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. I left the bedroom and sat in the living room, my mind racing with what to do next. There was no chance I'd stay with someone who had betrayed me and treated me like I was worthless. If she wanted excitement, then I'd give her something unforgettable. I'd been planning to propose, I even had a ring. If she was willing to humiliate me, then I'd return the favor, only this time in front of her friends and a crowd of strangers. Since she loved grand gestures, a public proposal seemed like the perfect stage. The day of the proposal arrived, and everything seemed set. It was a cool winter day, with soft snow flurries creating a romantic atmosphere. We went to a pop-up roller rink in the heart of the city. Her 3 friends and my best friend were hidden in the crowd, ready to record what they thought would be a touching proposal. I approached the DJ and asked for the microphone, saying I had a special surprise for my girlfriend. He assumed I was about to propose, so he handed it over without question. I stepped up to the mic, and everyone in the rink turned their attention to us, their faces expectant, anticipating a beautiful moment. But instead of proposing, I announced that I was ending things because I knew about her affair. Gasps echoed throughout the rink as people's smiles vanished into shock. Silence settled over the room, with everyone watching my girlfriend, who had turned as red as a tomato. I told her I'd seen her texts, that I'd be moving out, and that she'd never hear from me again. I even pointed to her friend, the one who'd always disliked me, and told her she needed to work on herself. Afterward, I reached out to the girlfriend of the guy my girlfriend had cheated with, sharing everything. She dumped him on the spot and even went live on Instagram to tell her followers about the whole ordeal. Reflecting on this experience, I realized just how damaging infidelity and secrecy can be to trust and respect in a relationship. My decision to stage a public proposal only to end things was a painful expression of my own hurt and disappointment. Although informing the other man's girlfriend felt justified, it led to more complications in the end. Moving forward, my focus will be on healing, with support from friends, family, and maybe even a professional to help me rebuild.